featured a couple of cameos from famous people. Dan Aykroyd of Saturday Night Live could be spotted, as well as former wrestler and manager Lou Albano. He plays Cyndi Lauper's dad. The video also kicked off the wrestling craze of the 1980s, with the Rocket Wrestling connection giving rise to the WWE and WrestleMania events happening still decades later.
What's the matter? Don't you sing?
For its part, Girls Just Want to Have Fun shot to #1 in Canada in the spring of 1984, and the floodgates opened for more hit singles from Lauper's debut record. Over the next 18 months, 5 more singles hit the top 10, including All Through the Night and Time After Time. Cyndi Lauper's debut album, She's So Unusual, featured songs she wrote or co-wrote, and it features some cover songs. Prince wrote When You Were Mine, and there's also a cover of Money Changes Everything, originally done by the new wave outfit The Brains in 1978. And it must be said that Girls Just Want to Have Fun was also a cover. Cyndi Lauper's manager found the song when he was searching for extra tunes to have on the record, and he found a 1979 demo by singer-songwriter Robert Hazard. The song was written from the point of view of a young man who has parents who worry that he spends too much time chasing girls and not focusing on his own future. However, by changing a couple of pronouns and having a young woman with an independent spirit and image sing the song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun had a cultural impact still being felt today. For his part, Robert Hazard wasn't able to capitalize on the success of his most famous composition. He released only half a dozen sporadic albums before his death in 2008. But he did introduce the world to this song. So, here's the original version of Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Robert Hazard on You Heard It Here First. That is the demo of Girls Just Want to Have Fun, written and recorded by Robert Hazard in 1979. And as you just heard, it later became the signature song for American performer Cyndi Lauper. She went on to win the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1985.
Damn right.
14 minutes now before 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock Mountain Time. I'm Jason D'Souza. Good morning. Thank you for listening to North by Northwest on CBC Radio 1. Well, Haida pole carver Lyle Campbell has been working for months on a memorial pole
in honor of his late mother, Alice Campbell. Well, earlier this week, the results of all that sweat and love were put on display in Prince Rupert. That is where a physically distanced gathering witnessed the raising of the memorial pole, and the CBC's Matt Allen was there.
My name's Lyle Campbell. I'm a Hyde Carver. From Masset, Haida, here with my family, my wife beside me, Kim Campbell, and we're raising a memorial pole at the moment. We're just securing it into the ground.
Your wife's name is Kim Campbell?
Figure of the eagle that goes on top and place that on top, so there's still one more part.
Your wife's name is Kim Campbell?
So far, we've got the pole upright, and it's in a nice angle, and it looks fantastic. Bottom figure is a beaver, and on the beaver's tail there's a special crest. It's called the eagle in the nest. It's kind of a tribute to the Edenshaws. Speaks of Charles Edenshaw's work, and basically it's telling people who we are as a family. We're Edenshaw people, and so if people know their carving really well, they could see that, and they wouldn't even have to ask us who we are. So above that, there's a butterfly between the beaver's ears that is grasping onto the beaver's ears, and then the eagle above that is grasping onto the butterfly, and then on top of the eagle, in between the ears, just on the start of the column, you got a frog, and then 12 dragonflies kind of wrapped the spiral column, and then on top there will be a seated eagle that we're going to put in place here soon. The first part of it is basically our matriarchs of our family, the women, the eldest woman of our family, and then followed suit by all the way to our youngest women, our young girls. They basically bless the pole, so they use cedar bough branches to kind of brush the pole off, and it's a cleansing of anything that accumulated on the pole while we're carving it. And then it's also a spiritual blessing, and our family saying, we appreciate what's done here, and we give it our blessing, and if this can happen. We then did the carver's dance, which is the awakening of the spirit of the pole itself. So you'll notice during that time we're doing chanting, and there's a lot of heavy drumming, and we dance around with our carver tools in hand, and we basically chant it through the pole, and we wake the spirit up. And so this pole now is alive, it's its own entity, so it looks fantastic. It's going to stand for a couple hundred years. We're using a 30-ton crane. We also got a 45-foot magnet. Weighed 4,500 pounds on the final weigh-in, just the main part of the pole. And so it's a lot of trial and error. The driver was kind of like, first time doing this for me, so it's a bit of trial and error, and we had to pick it up a few times to get it in the right position. Right now, all the guests and all the young people are here. They're putting rock into the hole, securing the base of the pole, and they're adding now some nice crush. It's called road crush. So, a lot of people come forward, and they're just giving a whole lot of their time, energy, or finances to make this happen. So there's a very long list of people that I have to thank afterwards.
As the man behind the carving of this pole, wasn't like to see that finally go up.
Well, it's a big relief. It's a lot of countless hours go into it when you carve poles. People ask all the time, how long did it take to carve? And I say, well, for 3.5 months I practically lived under these two tents. And for one example, from June 28th to July 28th, we worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I didn't ever see my wife, my little baby, our new little baby girl. I didn't get to see her much, so it's a big relief, and it's also a lot of joy because now I can go home and spend some time with my family.
Of course, this is in honor of your mother. What would she be saying or thinking if you can see this now?
Well, I think she's smiling down from heaven right now because this was truly one of her life wishes to have a pole, to own her own Haida pole. And just as the pole was going into the upright position, the sun came up from behind the clouds, so I really feel that the Creator's smiling down upon us.
Oh,
and
shut up.
sitting beside
You
him.
can Google what time the sun comes up, bozo.
That is Haida artist Lyle Campbell, who raised a memorial pole earlier this week in honor of his mother, and thanks to the CBC's Matt Allen in Prince Rupert for that piece. 9 minutes now before 7 o'clock. Well, Gurdeep Pandher is a white horseman, known for spreading his love of Bhangra throughout the Yukon and beyond, and he isn't letting the COVID-19 pandemic stop him from doing just that. Currently, Gurdeep is dancing his way through British Columbia, and CBC News had a chance to catch up with him earlier this week in Vancouver.
About 10 years ago, I was exploring Canada. I went everywhere in Canada. When I became Canadian citizen, I had curiosity to learn about Canada, about people, about the landscape, about remote cultures from little communities, cultures from our indigenous people. So I went everywhere. I lived very, very small villages. And then from my explorations, I ended up being in the Yukon. So when I went to the Yukon, I really loved the place. The people and the landscape both were gorgeous, so I decided to stay there. As Bhangra is part of Sikh culture, so I was born into this. Bhangra is a traditional Punjabi dance. It was created by Punjabi and Sikh farmers. Originally, farmers, when they used to get bored and tired after their farming activities, they used to dance Bhangra. Even after harvesting their crops, they used to dance Bhangra to express their happiness, joy, and accomplishment. So Bhangra is a happy dance. Traditionally, it's a happy dance, and it's also a workout dance, because when you dance Bhangra, it's high energy dance, and you get a lot of exercise. Nowadays, Bhangra is in music videos, in movies. A lot of people go to Bhangra sessions to get good workouts too. I believe that through my Bhangra, I will continue bringing people together. Everybody likes dancing. In Bhangra, it lifts people's spirits up, and when it lifts their spirits up, it creates a good mood and good momentum. They love to join, and yeah, that is right. Lots and lots of people from all backgrounds, they come to my classes, sessions, or they watch my videos, which I love that, especially these days when people feel divided. It raises education. It creates awareness. I find that one reason behind racism is a lack of education. When people don't know about other people, they become suspicious, they become doubtful. So when people start to learn, when people know about other people, it creates more deeper connections. And when people know other people in a more deeper way, then good friendships, connections, or relationships they form, and it eliminates racism.
Yes, you eliminate the racism, or you eliminate the enemy. You got to bomb them and then you eliminate them.
Dancer Gurdeep Pandher speaking earlier this week to CBC News, and he is dancing his way through this month. This is the sound of the Daniel Herzog Jazz Orchestra. The trumpet player and band leader just released his debut album, Night Devoid of Stars. His 16-piece jazz orchestra is made up of some of the brightest lights on BC's jazz scene. This weekend, Daniel joins Hot Air to talk about his love of big sounds and how he's adapting his musical dreams in the face of the pandemic. And that is today, right after the 5 o'clock news. Until then, here is more from the album Night Devoid of Stars.
got to dance Bankra and then you got to eliminate them. You got to plant the bomb and then detonate it and then they all die.
New album, Night Devoid of Stars. Daniel is the special guest this week on Hot Air. BC's Jazz Show starts.
Hello? What the hell's going on?
19, they now have 629 active cases of the virus, 12 in hospital, 4 in intensive care, but no new COVID-19 related deaths in the last day. And British Columbians living outside of the Lower Mainland will see a new ride-sharing option on the road soon after being initially denied in January due to not enough information about its business plan. Re-Ride has now been approved. Our next news coming up at 7:30, 8:30 Mountain Time.
Brian, thank you very much. And coming up in the next half hour of the program, parents, are you feeling extra anxious about sending your kids back to school in a matter of weeks? We'll have more on that after the news.
This week on Hot Air, big band leader Daniel Herzog. His debut album is called Night Devoid of Stars, and his 16-piece jazz orchestra is made up of some of the brightest lights on the West Coast jazz scene. We'll find out what drives his love of big sounds and how he's adapting his musical dreams in the face of the pandemic. I'm Margaret Gallagher. I hope you'll join us for BC's Jazz Show Saturdays right after the 5 p.m. news on CBC Radio 1.
Now on CBC Gem.
We used to hook up at secretly.
Based on Sally Rooney's best-selling novel.
Don't tell anybody in school about this.
Like I talked to him at school.
The series that critics are calling both epic and intimate.
What about now? Would you say your feelings are important?
Obviously.
How is it obviously?
And a triumph in every way.
Hey, did you think that I could read your mind at times? I don't think that's normal.
It's not.
Normal People. New series. Now streaming on CBC Gem. Coming up later this morning, it's Day 6 with Brent Banbury.
Talking Heads drummer Chris France's new memoir, Remain in Love, is not just about the band. It's also a tribute to his enduring love for his wife, Tina Weymouth, and the timeless music they made as Tom Tom Club. Chris France and Remain in Love, coming up on Day 6.
Tom Tom Club. What you gonna do when your feet just fall? How come you go when your feet just fall?
Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia.
How come you go when your feet just fall?
Thousands of people are protesting for a 7th day in Belarus. They say President Alexander Lukashenko won a rigged election. They want him to step down. Lukashenko says the demonstrations pose a threat to the region. He discussed the situation with Russian President Vladimir Putin this morning on the phone. Meanwhile, the EU is preparing new sanctions against Belarus. Yaroslav Romanchuk is with the strategy think tank in Minsk.
Sanctions on the people who are involved in atrocities and the torture would definitely be a wonderful and positive moral and psychological support. This is not enough to bring Lukashenko to the table of negotiation and to force him, to urge him to transfer power. We need more attention.
The leaders of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are calling for a new, free, and fair election. They also want to see the release of protesters who've been arrested. Health officials in British Columbia want to stop large gatherings and private parties this weekend. That province has recorded more than 70 new cases for the past 3 days in a row. Compliance officers will be checking places like banquet halls. Joe Ballard has more.
Events at the Italian Cultural Center in Vancouver usually sound like this. The grand ballroom packed shoulder to shoulder with up to 700 guests. But now, in this new normal, things have changed.
We limit the seating.
That's Mario Michelli with the center.
And we follow all the provincial regulations.
Gone are the buffets, the dance floors, the mingling, and above all, the hugs.
It's extremely difficult for Italians because, yes, we're a tactile group. We hug, we kiss.
But it seems not everyone is playing by the rules. leading to a warning from BC's Minister of Health, Adrian Dix.
If you have banquet halls where private party takes place, you will be seeing environmental health officers and people in public health.
At the Punjab Banquet Hall in Surrey, they've also had to adapt, keeping parties to under 50 people. That's one rule owner Shama Gill doesn't agree with. He says the maximum should be decided case by case based on the size of the hall.
This should allow more people at the table. We have like 829 seating, so we can have spread out the people. It should be more people allowed.
As for owners who knowingly break the rules, both men agree it hurts the entire industry. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Surrey.
The city of Ottawa says one of its bylaw officers went too far trying to enforce COVID-19 restrictions. He assaulted a man in a park. It happened in April. As Matthew Cookfor reports, the officer has been fired.
That fact is beyond dispute.
Lawyer David Amber says it's clear his client was assaulted. He says Obi Ifedi was left with a cut lip and scrapes after an Ottawa bylaw officer tackled him and punched him in the mouth. Ifedi was in the park with his 7-year-old daughter. Amber says the firing doesn't resolve what he sees as the bigger issue, that Ottawa police did charge the bylaw officer after their investigation.
I would much rather have seen the bylaw officer keep his job, but with some form of sanction and some form of remedial training taking place, but at the same time also be held accountable in the way that anybody else would be in the criminal justice system.
Police opted instead for a pre-trial diversion program. The city announced Friday the use of force was deemed excessive and in violation of their policy and training standards. Anthony DeMonte is General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services. He says any assault against a member of the public is taken seriously, but he also calls it an isolated incident.
Our policies, our procedures, and our training programs, I think were validated as a result of the analysis, and we continue to look at that.
The incident happened in Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh's ward. She says it sent the wrong message about the public health rules.
This was about a matter to do with COVID-19 and clearing out a park, and it got way out of hand, and we had a victim.
Ifedi's lawyer says his client still faces more than $2,000 in fines that he plans to fight. Matthew Cookfor, CBC News, Ottawa.
A heat wave in California is straining the state's power grid. Overnight, there have been rolling blackouts. Utility companies cut off power to hundreds of thousands of customers for an hour at a time. Daniel Swain is a climate scientist in Southern California.
We think a lot about wildfires as being dangerous and floods as being dangerous and earthquakes as being dangerous, but over the past decade, I believe the heat waves in California have actually caused more human harm than those things put together.
He says temperatures could hover around 37 degrees Celsius for the next week. That is forcing people to crank their air conditioning. Inland residents are expected to head to the coast to cool down, but there is concern about physical distancing on the state's beaches. California recorded more than 10,000 new COVID-19 infections just yesterday. COVID-19 is overwhelming Bolivia's health services, and a political crisis is compounding the problem. A national strike and protests have brought the South American country to a standstill. As Joan Leishman reports, it's a deadly combination.
That 65-year-old coronavirus patient, Mario Lamici, pleading with protesters who are blocking major highways. Please, he says, let oxygen through. His doctor, Erica Perez Albrecht, is enraged.
I'm certain that if I had been able to give him oxygen, he would have survived long enough to find him a place at the hospital.
The blockades are part of national demonstrations against interim leader Janine Anís. The right-wing hardliner took office after President Evo Morales fled Bolivia, accused of rigging elections last year. But Anís has postponed new elections twice, and opponents fear she's planning to hold on to power. Teacher Miguel Cassis says this reminds him of other dangerous times.
The whole country is spiraled into chaos, which can lead to a civil war and, worse still, the return of military governments.
Military and police trucks surround a convoy carrying liquid oxygen. This time, protesters are promising to allow it through, but they say the blockades will continue until they get assurances the election, now scheduled for October, will go ahead. Joan Leishman, CBC News, Toronto.
RCP in Alberta say a pickup truck hit 2 rail workers late last night. The workers were taken to hospital with serious injuries. They had been repairing a damaged track at a highway crossing just west of Edmonton. Police say the driver of the pickup truck was not hurt. Countries around the world are commemorating the 75th anniversary of the victory over Japan. VJ Day marked the effective end of the Second World War. Dominic Velitis has more on the events being held in the United Kingdom.
Commemorations in London began at sunrise with a rendition of When the Battle's O'er, performed by a lone military piper on the deck of HMS Belfast. The scene was played out by pipers in India, Australia, New Zealand and Nepal.
Today we remember and give thanks.
A service of remembrance was then held at Britain's National Memorial Arboretum, where Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall led the nation in a 2-minute silence. A brief period of reflection, followed by a flypast, courtesy of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Throughout the day, the RAF's Red Arrows will perform flypasts of their own over the UK's capital cities. Meanwhile, large screens placed all over the country will show a photo montage of veterans. Among them, Prince Philip, who was a young Royal Navy officer aboard a warship in Tokyo Bay when Japan surrendered. World leaders, including Canada's Justin Trudeau,
to all who served, nous vous remercions,
have today thanked veterans in a specially recorded video message, each saying in turn, to all who served, we thank you. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, Bristol.
Longtime Ganawagi Grand Chief Joseph Norton has died.
His passing is truly the end of an era. He's really going to be missed, because every time an elder is lost, we lose a little bit of that heritage and knowledge of the older style of Mohawk.
That's Joe Delaronde, spokesperson for the Mohawk Council of Ganawagi. He says Chief Norton's death was unexpected. He fell in his home yesterday afternoon and was taken to hospital. Joseph Norton served as Grand Chief of Ganawagi from 1982 to 2004. He played a key role negotiating the deal that ended the Oka crisis in 1990, and he was re-elected in 2015. Grand Chief Joseph Norton was 70 years old. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, I'm Jason D'Souza, sitting in for Cheryl McKay, and you are listening to North by Northwest on CBC Radio 1 on this, the 15th day of August. And coming up in this hour of the program, hey parents, are you feeling extra anxious about sending your kids back to school this year? Well, don't worry, it's not just you. A lot of parents are feeling the same way, and to help you put the brakes on some of that anxiety, our parenting columnist Ann Douglas will be joining us in just a moment to offer some advice on preparing for a back-to-school season like no other. And coming up a little later on in this hour, we are going to continue our profile of BC-based scientists. We will introduce you to one biological engineer who's helped create a biodegradable mask to help combat COVID-19.
Brian Dance in the CBC Newsroom. Good Saturday morning. Health Minister Adrian Dixon, Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry are urging residents to keep their distance from people they don't know. This after 84 new cases were announced yesterday of COVID-19. Our next look at regional news coming up at 7:30, 8:30 in the Mountain Time Zone.
It is currently 14 degrees in Vancouver. In Victoria, you are waking up to 13 degrees. Kelowna currently sitting at 11 degrees, 14 degrees in Prince George, and in Cranbrook, you are looking at 11 degrees right now.
The 8:45 Departure Bay, Horseshoe Bay crossings filling up for sure at both terminals, but looking at the 7:45 Duke Point sailing, There is a sailing wait now from Tawasin, 85% full from Duke Point. And looking at the 9 a.m. Tawasin Swartz Bay route, 2/3 full from Tawasin, 90% full for the 8 a.m. from Swartz Bay. Check bcferries.com for all the latest times, weights, and crossings if you're planning on catching a ferry later today. Still washouts and flooding to deal with in the BC interior. Check bc.ca for the latest information on flooding. And don't forget that travel advisory for Haida Gwaii. The islands are closed to non-essential travel for the next little while they get over that bout of COVID-19. And that's a look at traffic.
All right, Brian Dance. Just looking over my right shoulder here outside of our view here at Studio 10 in downtown Vancouver. Quite the sunrise coming in over the last half hour. I don't want to see a cloud in the sky, at least in the south coast of Vancouver right now.
I don't mean to change the subject.
Yeah.
But I stopped at Karamias yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yes. And loaded up. The first apples are ready. Can you believe that already?
Got all the fresh fruit possible.
To me, all the fruit is ahead of schedule, and I'm not sure why, but other than the heat wave we had in a few weeks ago. But yeah, the first apples are ready, and there's plums, there's apricots, there's peaches, there's even a few cherries still lying around. It's just a great time, and of course the apples, more varieties will be available here shortly. But I love stopping there. We did some peach canning this past week.
Oh yeah, right on.
Yeah, made some jam and some syrup here for pancakes, and
'tis the season.
It's so fresh. It's lovely.
Well, so Karamios, obviously fruit is the highlight. You have to stop by the fruit stands, get some amazing fresh fruit. But here's the thing, Dancer. Last time I was up there, last summer, I guess it was just late summer last year, a friend of mine told me, if you're stopping by Karamios, obviously you have to get some fruit, but they have some of the best samosas I've ever had. And I was a bit skeptical because I've had some pretty good samosas in my time.
Sure.
Some pretty good homemade samosas as well. But no lie, some of the best I've ever had, like fresh samosas from a stand in Karamios. That was just outrageous. It was so delicious.
Oh, that sounds terrific.
So on top of the apples, grab some samosas the next time you're in Karamios.
There you go. Now I've got double the reason. I might stay the night.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had the chance to pick up some apples, which is great. I was out in Richmond this past weekend, or earlier this week, I should say. My weekends look a little bit different when I do this show, as you know. And we were out blueberry picking.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we've got about 10 pounds of blueberries in the fridge right now. Froze a few of them, but it's the fruit I can never get sick of. I'll eat a pound a day, and it doesn't even matter.
I know, it's wonderful. We're going to try and get to some blueberries this week, and maybe even some blackberries while they still hang in there.
Making my mouth water.
I know.
It's great. Water. Alrighty, well, let's check back in about 15 minutes' time.
I'll be here.
Brian Dance at the CBC British Columbia Newsroom. A very good Saturday morning to all of you. Thank you so much for being with us here on North by Northwest. I'm Jason D'Souza, sitting in for Cheryl McKay. Let's take a look now at your weather around the province, and we'll start with the South Coast. As mentioned,
sitting in for Cheryl McKay. They should just call it like
high in the sky with any.
I'm hosting this week. You know what I mean? You're not really sitting in for her.
29.
She hasn't been in for like 3
even
fucking
warmer
weeks.
Sunday as well, believe it or not, with highs to 35 degrees for inland areas. There is a chance of showers tomorrow night. In the southern interior, sunny with highs to 35 degrees. Sunny and warmer for Sunday as well. 38 degrees in the South Thompson Valley. Not as warm for the North Coast. You're looking at rainy conditions with highs to 17 degrees. Clearing for the central interior and a high of 23 degrees. Rain or showers in the Bulkley Valley and the lakes with a high of 17 degrees. You can expect rain as well for the Peace region. Windy conditions as well with a high of 21 degrees. Mainly cloudy and 19 degrees for the northeast. And for the northwest region of BC, rain with the risk of an afternoon thunderstorm. Windy with a high of 14 degrees. It is 16 minutes now past 7 o'clock. Well, it is shaping up to be a back-to-school season like no other. A year when parents and kids have been asked to make sense of a whole new set of rules for heading back to school. And of course, that's been triggering Sky-high levels of anxiety for a lot of parents and children. And even though the first day of school is still a matter of weeks away, our parenting columnist Anne Douglas joins us now with some practical advice on preparing for this one-of-a-kind back-to-school season. Good morning to you, Anne.
Hi, Jason.
So what would you say are parents and kids finding the most stressful these days, as we're just weeks now before school resumes?
I think it's the uncertainty, just not knowing how things are going to play out when school starts again. I mean, everybody's looking at all their options and they're researching policies and procedures, but that doesn't change the fact that the COVID-19 situation is constantly evolving. So we don't know what school is going to be like the first day, let alone a few weeks in. And mentally cycling through all those what-ifs can be really exhausting for parents and kids alike. And I think some parents and kids have some more specific concerns related to their own individual family situations. They may worry about, the health implications, perhaps for family members. They might be worried about how their own child is likely to adjust this year. So I think there's just layers and layers of things to worry about right now.
And on top of the anxiety that young people must be feeling these days, parents as well are obviously going to be going through quite a few emotions as well. How important is it for parents to be able to recognize the signs that they're giving off that their children will no doubt read?
Yes, well, I think it's critically important because every parent on the planet knows that your child will study your face and they're trying to figure out, the words are saying one thing, but the body language is telling me something else. So kids are really tuned in to what parents are thinking and feeling. In terms of having strategies for hitting the brakes on your own anxiety, I think that's critically important, and I say that as a professionally anxious person. This is just who I am. One strategy I've figured out over the years is to recognize when I'm falling into a pit of unproductive worrying, which that unproductive worrying psychologists refer to as rumination. And basically you're just allowing your brain to endlessly cycle through the same worry without making any progress on it. Or you make things even worse by teaming up with another person who has a similar kind of brain who can help you to feel even more anxious. So obviously this is not a good rabbit hole to fall down. Because all you're doing is you're exhausting yourself and you're not making the situation any better. So the way to manage it is to recognize when this is happening and to say to yourself, okay, there goes my brain again. I'm going to redirect it into maybe solving a part of the back-to-school puzzle because there are a lot of pieces in the puzzle, or even just taking a mental vacation from the worry. So that's rumination, and I think a second really helpful strategy for parents to know about is the importance of being able to make peace with whatever decisions you do end up making regarding your child's schooling, either now or down the road. It starts with recognizing that what you're dealing with is a less than perfect situation with less than perfect options, because we're dealing with, a really challenging time. It's not business as usual for anybody right now. Your goal at the end of the day is to feel comfortable with your process, to be able to say to yourself that when I made my decisions, I made them with the best information I had available to me at the time, and I'm not going to second guess this decision. I may rethink it, but I'm not going to endlessly ruminate about it and beat myself up.
So as you say, managing your own emotions for yourself is so key, but I'm wondering how you can balance the need to be honest with your children when they no doubt have questions about their return to school, but also not perhaps exacerbate some of the concerns that they also have.
Right, I think being honest is really important, and a lot of parents feel like sometimes they have to have all the answers. It's okay to say that you don't know or that nobody knows right now, while also giving them the message of confidence that we can figure this out together. So I think we can trust our kids to trust us, and we can, turn to other adults for support, because it is a really challenging situation.
And I know, Anne, you have some specific strategies that parents can use when it comes to helping kids manage their own worries.
Yes, I think that first of all, figure out whether your child is dealing with a specific worry or a more general worry. And for the kid who has a really specific worry, talk about that with them. So maybe they're really worried, what would happen if I lost my mask? Kids lose stuff at school. It's just a fact of life, right? So helping your child to figure out what could they do in that moment. Who could they turn to for help? What could they do? Maybe they have a spare mask in their backpack or something. Just knowing that you have a game plan and an ability to solve problems will help to get rid of that particular worry. With regard to more generalized worries that come from just not knowing what to expect, I think we can really normalize and validate that worry. A lot of people are feeling that way, and it makes sense that we're feeling that way because there are just so many unknowns. And then try to provide a layer of reassurance by helping kids to understand that not every single thing is unknown. The situation isn't 110% uncertain. We actually do know a few things, and maybe review some of the information that you've been receiving from the school. It can also be helpful to help kids to understand and work on their flexible thinking skills, which is their brain's ability to switch or pivot in the moment. So depending on your child's age and abilities, you could even have a little bit of fun working on those skills during the remaining weeks of summer. You know, you could be playing a board game like Snakes and Ladders, and halfway through the board game say, up until now, we've been trying to get to the top of the board every time we roll the dice. Now we're going to switch directions, and suddenly the game's idea is to get to the bottom of the board. It's surprisingly hard to do that. Or even just shaking up your family's routine and saying, you know what, we're having breakfast for dinner tonight. Then you can have a conversation about how our brains actually are surprisingly flexible. We can switch gears in the moment.
Given the unprecedented aspect of so much of this when it comes to parenting and schooling, are there any warning signs that a child might be feeling really crushed by all this worry, and perhaps it makes sense to have additional supports available?
Yes, I think you want to be able to differentiate between sort of garden variety worry, which everybody is feeling right now, and maybe more acute levels of anxiety that are making life really hard for a particular kid. So it starts with being tuned into what your child is communicating to you, both through their words and their behavior. If you have a child who's flying off the deep end in a way that they don't usually react, that could be the anxiety speaking. If they're experiencing a lot of physical symptoms like headaches and stomach aches that are unusual for that child, you would want to pay attention to that as well as any shifts in your child's day-to-day habits, their eating habits, their sleeping habits, their activity level, their energy level, their mood. And bottom line, ask yourself, is the level of anxiety interfering with my child's enjoyment of life and their ability to function? You know your child really well, so you can really tap into that knowledge about what is normal for your child. And if you do feel like your child would benefit from extra support, touch base with the school, touch base with child and youth mental health services, find out what kind of supports are available, because you don't have to handle this on your own, and neither does your child.
And I know as our parenting columnist, you've had probably everything thrown at you but the kitchen sink when it comes to issues with the children and parents, but does this just feel like a whole different level for you?
Oh, this is without a doubt the most challenging time that I have ever seen for parents, and I have been a parent for 32 years. I've been writing about parenting for 32 years. It is truly an unprecedented moment, and I know we're saying that a heck of a lot these days, but it is true. So I don't want any parent to feel like they're overreacting or that, you know, this problem is of their making. It's just a really challenging situation, but I honestly feel like, you know, we can find our way through this time together. And maybe I'll just offer a tiny little glimmer of hope. You know, the situation is really, really tough, but there are small things we can do, even in this difficult time, to make life a little better and maybe even easier for ourselves and our kids, even though our back-to-school worries are not about to vaporize anytime soon. And it's just the really important but fundamental health things, right? Like getting enough sleep, because a sleep-deprived brain is a more anxious brain, and your brain does not need any help feeling more anxious right now. It can be just having strategies for digging yourself out of one of those worry ruts we were talking about. But above all, reminding yourself to be extra kind to yourself and other people. Change is hard, and we are dealing with a lot of change right now, and we have been for a very long time. I honestly feel like relationships are what is going to carry us through. So as we head back to school and we think about the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, I think we need to add a 4th R, relationships, and recognize that in back to school 2020, that's going to be the most important R of all.
And it's all great advice. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Anne Douglas is our parenting columnist and the author of Happy Parents, happy kids and parenting through this storm. And of course, on top of hearing about students and how they're doing, it's important to talk to students about how they're doing. So tomorrow on the program, we are going to be joined by a panel of students from across the province to hear how they're feeling in these last few weeks before heading back to the classroom. It's 26 minutes now past 7 o'clock. You are listening to North by Northwest on CBC Radio 1. I'm Jason D'Souza, sitting in for Cheryl McKay. Well, in 1965, Buffy Sainte-Marie had this to say to Time magazine about whether she should be considered a protest singer. Quote, "I've written hundreds of songs and only half a dozen are of protest. I believe in leaving politics to the experts, only sometimes the experts don't know what's going on. I'm trying to scatter what I can of beauty in the places I think need it and to get rid of the boredom and the meanness in the world." End quote. Well, today Buffy Sainte-Marie is still spreading beauty around the world, continuing to make music and perform live for fans that span generations. In early September, she will be heading a major contemporary Indigenous music festival. The Two Rivers Remix Festival usually takes place in Lytton, BC. This year, it will live stream musical concerts for free from September 4th to the 6th. Right now, here is Buffy Sainte-Marie with All Around the World.
Je peux écouter ici Radio-Canada, Buffy Sainte-Marie, 1997. Tout le monde gagné.
Takes place from September 4th, 5th, and 6th. For more information, you can head to tworiversremix.ca. It is 7:31. Time now for the regional news with Brian Dance.
This is CBC News. Sunny and 15 degrees along the south coast, 13 and sunny in the central interior and the Cariboo. Good morning. The number of COVID cases in BC continues to climb, and as Tim Weeks reports, health officials hope this weekend will be a turning point.
The numbers of new cases over the last few days have been among the highest since the pandemic began. BC recorded 84 new cases in the last 24 hours. There are now 629 active cases of the virus, with 12 people in hospital and 4 of those in intensive care. There have been no new deaths. There has been one new healthcare facility outbreak. It's at Queen's Park Care Centre in the Fraser Health region. But the health ministry says community exposure events are still taking place around the province and on flights in and out of BC. And the number of people who might have been exposed continues to grow. There are now more than 2,000 people under active public health monitoring because of exposure to a known case. The health ministry says a number of bars, restaurants, and nightclubs have been closed following COVID incidents, and more will be monitored for violating guidelines. Officials are asking people to play safe this weekend and reduce the risk to those around them. Tim Weeks, CBC News, Vancouver.
Premier John Horgan has responded to actor Ryan Reynolds' social media message warning of the dangers of COVID-19. On Twitter, Reynolds said young people should only take medical advice from him if it concerns plastic surgery. But he goes on to say partying young people in BC could put some of the coolest older people on earth, like his mom, at risk of the potentially deadly virus. Horgan says behind Reynolds' humor is an important message on the danger imposed by the virus. The Attorney General's ministry says the most significant overhaul in ICBC's history is due to receive royal assent, and it received it yesterday. The statement from the ministry says enhanced care coverage will officially begin as the public insurer next spring, cutting out most lawyer costs and legal fees and cutting insurance bills by about 20%. Government says not only will the measure, sometimes known as no-fault insurance, free up more than $1.5 billion in lower rates by 2020, will also offer significantly more benefits to those injured in crashes. Critics of enhanced care, such as the trial lawyers of BC, say the no-fault system removes the legal rights of the injured, but the president of Doctors of BC says it allows access to expanded benefits and could speed a patient's recuperation. Surrey RCMP wants you to know about a sex offender who officials believe poses a high risk to reoffend. The CBC's Dan Burt has more.
28-year-old Howard Geddes Skelding was released from BC Corrections yesterday and is living in Surrey. Mounties say he's been convicted of sexual assault, sexual interference, and robbery, among other crimes. Police say Geddes Skelding is known to approach women while exposing himself or masturbating, then sexually assaulting them. He is not allowed to leave his house without permission. He has to wear an electronic monitor, and he can't drink or take drugs. RCMP asks anyone who sees Geddes Skelding breaking those conditions to call police right away and not approach him. You can see a photo of Howard Geddes Skelding on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Dan Burrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
British Columbians living outside of the Lower Mainland will see a new ride-sharing option on the road soon. After being initially denied in January due to not enough information on its business plan, Re-Ride has been approved. The BC-based ride-hailing company already serves parts of Ontario and Winnipeg, and the Passenger Transportation Board gave its green light this past week. Director of Operations, Jamil Chaudhry, says he hopes to be on the road by November.
We're hoping to have up to 30 drivers in each community. Now, it takes us a month or it takes us 60 days. I cannot predict that at this point, but we're hoping to have at least that amount of drivers in each community we go in.
Re-Ride will be bringing service to Victoria, Nanaimo, and in the interior in Kelowna, Kamloops, and Prince George, but says the pandemic could create a delay if the curve doesn't flatten soon. Chaudhry says the company plans to start up in the Lower Mainland by 2021. And the Greater Vancouver Food Bank says it has received 7 shipping containers full of food from cruise line Holland America. Food Bank officials call the donation amazing and say it includes luxury items such as lobster and beef tenderloin. The organization issued an urgent call for donations before the provincial government provided $3 million in an emergency grant to Food Banks BC. Food Bank says it's unsure how it will hand out that food. It's coming up 23 minutes before 8, before 9 in the Mountain Time Zone. That is the CBC News. Jason now has a look at the provincial weather.
Absolutely, and to make a long story short, it's going to be a hot one across a lot of the province. But yes, Brian, I'll go through that in more detail right now. Starting with the south coast, sunny with highs to 24 degrees, 29 inland, even warmer tomorrow with highs from 35 degrees in inland areas. Holy moly. There's a chance of showers tomorrow night as well. For the southern interior, you are looking at sunny conditions, highs to 35 degrees, sunny and warmer for your Sunday as well. 38 degrees in the south of Thompson Valley. Along the north coast, rain and highs to 17 degrees, clearing for the central interior with a high of 23 degrees. Rain or showers in the Bulkley Valley and the lakes with a high of 17 degrees. You can expect rain for the Peace region, windy as well with a high of 21 degrees. Mainly cloudy, 19 degrees for the northeast, and for the northwest region of BC, rain with the risk of an afternoon thunderstorm, windy with a high of 14 degrees. Brian?
Let's have a look at sports, and those Canucks are fun to watch. Vancouver's taking a 2-0 lead in their Stanley Cup playoff with the defending Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. Bo Horvat scored on a breakaway at 5:55 of overtime.
Here's the break. It's Bo Horvat. Deep on the set. Scores! Game winner for the captain.
And the Canucks win 4-3. It was Horvat's second goal of the game and his sixth of the postseason. Elias Pettersson and Tanner Pearson also scored for the Canucks, while Jacob Markstrom made 34 stops in the Vancouver net. Game 3 goes Sunday night at 7:30 Pacific time.
For Quinn Hughes on that shift. Didn't play the last 6 minutes of regulation. You heard Kevin Jackson talk about that.
Elsewhere last night, the goalie Cam Talbot stopped 35 shots for a shutout as Calgary blanked the Dallas Stars 2-0. The Flames lead the best-of-7 first-round series 2-1. Anaheim Lakes Carey Price stopped all 30 shots he faced for his 7th postseason shutout as the Montreal Canadiens routed the Philadelphia Flyers 5-0. That series tied 1-1. In baseball, Teoscar Hernandez hit 2 of Toronto's 6 home runs as the Blue Jays beat the Tampa Bay Rays 12-4. Mariners are not having a great year. Now 7 wins and 14 losses after dropping an 11-1 decision yesterday. Toronto Raptors have finished the regular season with a better winning percentage than last season's championship team. Toronto closed out their regular season with a 117-109 victory over the Denver Nuggets. The Raptors begin the defense and their playoff run Monday against Brooklyn. And next up, the Vancouver Whitecaps, a date with Toronto on Tuesday. And that's a look at sports.
You know, going back to that Canucks victory, I know we talked a little bit about it last week, Brian, about how these playoffs are so strange. One, the fact that you're playing hockey in August seems bizarre, but also these games, high intensity, but being played in front of no audience at all, no fans, of course, allowed to watch these
crowd noise.
The crowd noise has been pumped in. It's not exactly the same. No. At first, it was strange, but I have to say, watching this young Canucks team do what they're doing, winning these dramatic games, regardless of the lack of drama, I suppose, that fans bring in, I'm swept away.
Yeah, no, it's
the Canucks.
Well, I think
they do well with
the game. Kind of really.
Fans aren't watching.
They won the first
for some
game
reason.
And
they always do well away.
Very well, and you wondered, well, are they going to keep that up?
Yeah.
And I think they reassured that last night, and I think it was really exciting, pulling up after winning or leading rather 3-1, and then St. Louis tied. I think it was 6 seconds.
They tied with 6 seconds left, and it was a controversial goal because at first the referee said it was a high stick, which is a no goal in hockey, of course, and then they reviewed it and called it a good goal.
Right.
I think everyone across BC just said, "Oh man, are you kidding me?" And then playoff hockey after leading by 2 goals in the third period, but
they were deflated, right? They had to be deflated coming into that overtime period. Anyway,
I will also say it's very funny to watch the players celebrate. Both the goals scored by Horvat, you mentioned them, but both times he kind of put his arms up and looked into the crowd, only to realize there was no crowd to salute. So very interesting times, actually.
Okay, and game 3 is tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, 7:30 you mentioned, right?
There you go.
Pacific time. All right. Dancer, thank you very much. That is Brian Dance at the CBC News Desk this morning, at the Sports Desk as well. And a very good Saturday morning to all of you. I'm Jason D'Souza, sitting in for Cheryl McKay. Thank you so much for being with
Desk
us
as
here
well.
on North by Northwest. Well, the ongoing pandemic has shown us just how vital the work that scientists do is. Here on North by Northwest, we've been using the past few months as an opportunity to introduce you to experts in various fields. And my next guest has been instrumental in rethinking the way we all think about an item that has grown in importance this year. Masks have become top of mind during the COVID-19 pandemic, but can often lead to heavy waste as well. Johan Foster is a chemical and biological engineer, associate professor in the Faculty of Applied Science.
What the hell happened to they're not effective? Wearing a mask is not effective. What the hell happened to that?
And I had the chance to speak with
Like, they don't come out and say we don't know. They come out and say it's not effective. So anything you say after that, if you change it, it's gonna sound like bullshit. Because you sound like you know, but you don't know. You're just guessing. So tell us you're guessing.
Yeah. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, me and a colleague, Orlando Rojas, at CBC,
Masks are not enough to prevent the spread of coronavirus. 2 months later, masks aren't enough to spread. Are you guys retarded? Do you expect anyone to trust you?
Improperly, so strewing his garbage on streets. And this increased over time. And we quickly realized that we could make an impact there. We could work on a filtration material that could act as a mask or other filtration materials that, if they were unfortunately disposed of improperly or used in different ways, they could be composted. They could be taken out of the waste stream. So that was the initial impetus. And then, a lot of work went into trying to develop a material that would effectively remove water droplets from the air.
And just walk us through what challenges that poses when you're essentially trying to create a biodegradable mask that still functions as any proper mask would.
Yeah, so it's kind of competing forces. You have materials that you want to degrade, okay, but you don't want them to degrade too quickly. You want them to absorb water, but you don't want them to absorb water too quickly. So if you make something completely hate water or hydrophobic, then it works very well as a filter. But that same material then will take a long, long time to degrade. So the commercially available masks at this point are made of things like polypropylene or polyethylene. Fantastic materials that are very resistant to water uptake, but also chemical degradation. The problem with those is that they take a long, long time to degrade. So you need to be able to develop a material. In this case, we started using wood pulp and kind of a finer, refined pulp called nanocellulose, which allows us to create the structure, the kind of the network, which allows us to remove water droplets from the air. So that's how the virus is being carried around, and that's what we want to remove from our breath in this case.
How important was it to be able to find locally sourced materials that you find here in BC?
It wasn't necessarily just about BC, but definitely within Canada. It was very important because a lot of the politics or politicking that went on early on in this pandemic made movement of materials either a political football or just simply a logistical problem. For moving, say, filtration material, a lot of the filtration material used for masks is made in China. And it quickly became a problem to actually get that here to Canada. So that became a big problem with the supply chain. So if we could shorten that supply chain, if we could make a mask and a material that was completely sourced within Canada, and ideally even more local than that, you reduce the cost of transportation, but then you also have a better control over whether you can get these in a future pandemic where transportation between countries becomes problematic.
I find this so fascinating, having a temporary mask that's biodegradable. Obviously, you'd still want people to dispose of it properly, but let's say, as you mentioned right off the top, you find masks on the street. If one of these masks was left in the middle of a park, what would happen to it over the course of months and years?
Yeah, well, hopefully over the course of just months, it would completely degrade. So think of it really as a very well-refined piece of paper, really. Okay, so you throw that on the ground. Please don't do that. But if it happens to be fall out of your pocket, it would just simply be incorporated. Most of the things that we're including in this are wood sourced. A few are not, but they're all kind of bioproducts. And so the nature has an ability to break all of those bioproducts down and kind of reincorporate them into soil. So in an ideal world, all of these masks would just be composted. So instead of putting them in the trash heap or incinerating them, we would just
oh my God.
them into our compost. The virus
Oh, she actually wrote the fucking thing.
Once it's not in the human body. So there'd be no worry about contaminating dirt, for example.
Wow! Oh my God! She drew everything.
As you mentioned,
wow! She's got like thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment there. Freaking $1,300 HP iPad. Freaking that's like a $2,300 desktop right there.
Realistic for a mask like this, forward thinking though it may be, to fill the needs of the PPE.
Oh, I feel bad for the woman in the wheelchair. She can't dance.
I don't think it will fill every need.
Oh, I feel so bad. Everyone's dancing and she's sitting in her wheelchair. Oh, that's so sad. Oh, what's she gonna do? Not participate? Oh, that makes me so sad. I'm so sad. Oh, the poor wheelchair.
Now, for most applications, going to the store, you're not
the
going
poor
to be
wheelchair
exposed to
people,
something
man. What are they gonna do?
For that particular
Oh, that was so sad.
not necessarily going to
I have to go watch like Rick Hansen or something now.
For most
He's not as sad.
applications, and I think
I was just
whether
sad.
that's in a hospital or going to the store, we really should be wearing these masks for